Hey everyone, I've had a little time to read through the new open game license draft and collect my thoughts, and I wanted to share a couple things that I've noticed in reading through it. I will admit that when I first saw the draft, I was pretty impressed with what Wizards of the Coast had done. I didn't expect them to release the rules under the Creative Commons license, so that was actually a nice surprise. But as I dug further into the details, I started to realize that this was not as great as it seems, and there are really a few red flags. First of all, I want to keep perspective. What we have here is a situation where they set a really low bar. The first open game license we saw was terrible, and as a result, anything that they released was going to be better. Even if they exceeded expectations, where they are with this draft is still miles away from where it needs to be. So we can be happy that they seem to be heading in the right direction, but just being better than where they were before is still not the standard that we should be using here. This is not a good license by any stretch of the imagination. The next thing I want to look at is that they really highlight how the license says that it is perpetual and irrevocable, but it includes these two asides that say that perpetual means there is no set end date, and irrevocable means that the content under the license can never be withdrawn from that license. So while the definition of perpetual means for all time, they are simply saying that they have not set an end date for it. And that leaves the door open for them to later on set an end date. And they would still be in compliance with this agreement because at the time they published it, they did not have an end date, but later on they may actually have one, and then that license is no good. Next, they say that any content that is published under this license cannot be revoked. But there is nothing that prevents them from trying to do what they tried to do here, and that is to require people that sign up for a future license to stop publishing under the old license. They already tried to do it with the previous draft that they released, and I don't see anything here that changes that. So while they highlighted those two items here, I don't actually see anything in here that's different from what they've already told us. Next, I want to talk about the parts where it gets really disturbing, and that is the section about virtual tabletops. They make it a point of saying how virtual tabletops are fine as long as the virtual tabletop is only replicating what would happen if people were sitting around a table, and they give some examples. But if you start to add things at your virtual tabletop that you would not be able to do at a table, like add magic effects, then you're crossing a line into video game territory, and that's not allowed. I've got several issues with this. I've seen a lot of tables, including some that I've run, where we use fancy terrain and effects like fog and other things to make it a really interesting experience. So to say that a tabletop is just a flat map with tokens on it is not accurate. And we know full well from their previous announcements that they are working on their own virtual tabletop that will have those special effects. So this is clearly about them trying to control that market, not trying to protect the integrity of the game or anything like that. Another thing is that these effects already exist in Roll20, and I'm presuming in some of the other virtual tabletops. So they're saying if I'm running a D&D game in Roll20 and I click on a magic effect animation, that now I'm in violation of the terms of use, and they indicate that the virtual tabletop owners are on the hook to make sure that the games are compliant with the rules. So my big question with this one is, where does Wizards of the Coast get off trying to tell me how to run my games? If I'm a creative dungeon master and I want to use magical effects or animated maps or music or anything else to enhance the experience at my table, how can Wizards of the Coast try to control any of that? There's no way that the publisher of a game can tell me how I can play the game. Wizards of the Coast is a company that essentially makes tools for building stories. But imagine if the company made hammers and saws and they told you that you could only use them to build with pine, or that you could only use them to build sheds but not houses. And that's really what Wizards of the Coast is trying to do here when they cross that line between the use of their content versus now telling players how you can actually play the game. Which leads to my last point. Why is this so hard? We're talking about a game. A set of rules, and we just want to play that game and run that game. We want to create characters, we want to create stories, but Wizards of the Coast is putting all these restrictions about what I can and cannot do. And it's going beyond just content creators. Some of this gets to the players and the actual tables themselves. I want to play a game, but here I am spending significant amounts of time reading through legal contracts and trying to understand copyright law. And I get that there are rules about content created by others and royalties, and I have no issues with any of that. But they are crossing the line and trying to control how I play the game too. And it's just too much. No, thank you. I don't want to have a law degree to play this game. And as I read through these drafts and all of the different caveats and everything that's in there about what I can and cannot do with this game, I just simply say, sorry, it's too complicated. I'm going to play a different game instead. And that's pretty much where I'm at. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Love to hear from you as always. Until next time, take care.